My friends, disbelieve and unbelief are two different but common subjects. This being an excellent question that gets to the heart of how the Bible describes the human response to God. While the words unbelief and disbelieve are closely related and often used interchangeably in everyday language, the Bible often uses them to describe two different aspects of a lack of faith. Here is the difference between unbelief and disbelief with references from the Bible. Both words come from the same Greek root, apistia, noun, and apistio, verb, which simply means without faith or not faith. However, the context in which they are used reveals a subtle but important distinction. The key difference is the condition versus the action. The simplest way to understand the difference is this. Disbelieve is an action or a decision. It is the act of refusing to believe a specific statement or truth. Unbelief is a condition or a state of being. It is a settled disposition of the heart that rejects God, regardless of the evidence. Think of it this way. Disbelief is the act of saying no to a specific claim. Unbelief is the underlying heart condition that makes that no possible and persistent. The most powerful example of this distinction is found in the Gospel of Mark, in the account of Jesus' resurrection. Mark 16:14, NKJV. Later he appeared to the 11 as they sat at the table, and he rebuked their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they did not believe those who had seen him after he had risen. Here we see both words used in the same verse. They did not believe, disbelieve. The disciples initially heard the report that Jesus was alive and chose not to accept it as true. This was their act of disbelief. They thought it was an idle tale. He rebuked their unbelief. Jesus didn't just rebuke them for the singular act of not believing the report. He rebuked the deeper, underlying condition of their hearts. Their unbelief was a stubborn, hard-hearted disposition that made them resistant to the truth, even when it was presented to them by trusted friends, and ultimately by Jesus himself. The act of disbelieving was the symptom. The unbelief was the disease. Another famous passage highlights this dynamic perfectly. Mark 9:24, NKJV. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." The man is clearly acting in faith, I believe, which is the opposite of disbelief. Yet he is acutely aware of a lingering condition of doubt and skepticism within him. He is not actively disbelieving Jesus' power at that moment, but he confesses that he still struggles with the deep-seated state of unbelief. This shows that unbelief can coexist with a desire to believe, as it is a condition of our fallen human nature. Disbelieve, unbelief, nature. An action, a choice, a decision. A condition, a state, a disposition. Scope, specific. It is a response to a particular truth or promise. General. It is the underlying attitude of the heart. Biblical imagery. Closing one's eyes to the light, dwelling in darkness. Cause. Often a result of a lack of evidence or a preference for an alternative explanation. A deep-seated rebellion or hardness of heart against God. Examples of disbelieve, the action. Luke 24:11, and their words seemed to them like idle tales, and they did not believe them. The disciples' initial reaction to the resurrection report. Acts 28:24, and some were persuaded by the things which were spoken, and some disbelieved. Paul's preaching in Rome resulted in two different actions: belief and disbelief. 1 Peter 2:7, therefore to you who believe he is precious, but to you who are disobedient, some translations use disobedient here, which is directly linked to the concept of apistia. The action of not believing is an act of disobedience. Examples of unbelief, the condition. Hebrews 3:12. Beware, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. Here, unbelief is described as an evil heart, a condition that leads to departure from God. Matthew 13:58. Now he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Jesus' power was not limited in itself, but the condition of the people's hearts created an atmosphere where faith, the channel for miracles, was absent. Romans 11:20. Well said, because of unbelief they were broken off, and you stand by faith. Paul describes the condition of the Jewish people who were cut off from God's covenant promises. In conclusion, disbelief is the act of rejecting God's truth, while unbelief is the hardened heart condition that makes that rejection a way of life.